Humans love control, absolutely obsessed with it. Like that neighbor who meticulously trims his hedge into the shape of a startled squirrel. Impressive, yes, but utterly unnecessary. Our prehistoric ancestors decided one day that they'd had enough of traipsing after gazelles and waiting politely for figs to ripen. Instead, they thought it would be brilliant to tell nature exactly what to do, where to do it, and when. So began humanity's favorite pastime, meddling. Around 10,000 years ago, some clever chap, let's call him Keith, noticed cereals, specifically wheat, had this fabulous property: if you planted one grain, you could get 10 back. Now, you'd think this was genius, wouldn't you? But you'd be wrong. This simple realization turned Keith and his friends from happy-go-lucky gatherers into a group of obsessive agriculturalists who spent their days sweating in fields, cursing at rocks and scolding birds. With this bright idea firmly planted, pun intended, Keith and his mates started telling wheat exactly where to grow. Of course, wheat didn't actually listen because it was wheat, but humans are persistent. First, they scattered seeds, then they dug holes, and finally they built elaborate irrigation systems, because why make life simple when you could make it overwhelmingly complicated? Suddenly, humans weren't wandering freely anymore. They were tied to their fields, houses, granaries, and their increasing piles of useless possessions. They became the world's first hoarders, except instead of collecting vintage spoons or quirky tea cozies, they accumulated hats made of various furry creatures they'd outsmarted. The next step was predictable. Once they'd managed to boss around wheat, why stop there? Humans turned their bossiness to animals, and if you think wheat had it rough, spare a thought for sheep. Humans began rounding up these fluffy escape artists, locking them into fenced areas and appointing the dullest, most unadventurous sheep as the prime breeding stock. Essentially, if you were a sheep with dreams and aspirations, well, too bad. The penalty for ambition was becoming lunch. Through selective breeding, sheep eventually became so docile and compliant that even a mildly assertive 10-year-old could boss around an entire flock with just a stick and a loud voice. Humanity making animals boring since 8000 BCE. Yet this new way of life came with unexpected guests, primarily germs. Germs adore human settlements. Hierarchy and hard work. Villages became the Las Vegas for bacteria, overcrowded, dirty, and a little bit chaotic. Diarrhea, flu, smallpox, you name it. Everyone wanted a ticket to these lively new communities. For the first time, humans found themselves regularly trading sniffles and stomach aches as if they were baseball cards. Naturally, human society became a hierarchy, those lovely systems where one person has 20 fields, a palace, and a personal flock of sheep, and someone else gets nothing but backache and a front row seat to misery. Kings emerged, supported by bureaucrats, essentially the original middle management. Bureaucrats invented writing, not to produce Shakespeare or Harry Potter, but mainly to remember who owed whom grain. Seems the very first writing in history involved exciting stories like Keith owes Barry 10 sacks of barley. Truly riveting stuff. Kings and priests quickly figured out the real trick wasn't forcing people to work. It was making them think that working harder was their idea. They sold a brilliant lie: work hard now, and you'll relax later. Taxes, slavery, and paperwork. 3 pillars of ancient civilization that surprisingly haven't changed much. Taxes were cleverly disguised as offerings to the gods, while slavery was justified as a divine right. And paperwork, well, that was just a way to keep track of who owed what to whom. Ah, the good old days. Humans, it seems, never quite caught on that later never came. They built enormous temples and offered daily gifts to gods, thinking this would fix their problems. When it didn't work, which was often, the priests blamed the people for being stingy with offerings. Thus was born humanity's second favorite pastime, guilt. And let's not forget taxes, everyone's favorite word, ranked just below dentist and moist. The system was simple. Kings needed grain to build palaces and fight wars. People had grain because, they spent their lives growing it. Kings took grain from people. End of system? Simple? Yes. Popular? Not exactly. The irony is that humans invented kings and taxes themselves. It's like complaining your trousers are uncomfortable after deliberately putting a hedgehog in your pocket. Things escalated quickly. Humans, having domesticated plants and animals, decided next to domesticate each other. Slavery emerged, showcasing humanity's impressive ability to make life unpleasant for fellow humans. People became property, just like sheep or cereal fields, creating a legacy of injustice that humanity would struggle with for millennia. It wasn't a good look. The legacy of Keith is, well, a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, he gave us agriculture, cities and civilization. On the other, he also gave us bureaucracy, taxes, and the endless grind of paperwork. Thanks, Keith. On reflection, control didn't make life easier. It just gave humans a to-do list that got longer every day. Agricultural societies faced droughts, floods, locust invasions, wars, diseases, and irritatingly complicated paperwork. To manage it all, humans created bureaucracy, a system specifically designed to frustrate everyone involved. If you've ever been stuck on hold listening to elevator music, you can thank Keith and his brilliant idea about planting wheat. In conclusion, the human obsession with control has been both a triumph and a tragedy. It gave us cities, writing, and an impressive variety of cheeses, but it also brought wars, taxes, and paperwork. Lots and lots of paperwork. It's as if humanity found paradise, glanced around and said, "It's lovely here, but it needs more forms." And this, dear friends, is how humanity turned a life of gathering figs and chasing gazelles into one of eternal anxiety, tax returns, and eventually traffic jams. All because someone named Keith thought it would be clever to plant wheat instead of picking it. Well done, Keith. I hope you're proud.